welcome. Today's a special day. We're out here at Fort Johnson in the Charleston Harbor, South Carolina. Today we're here for the 250th anniversary of the first flying of the Moultrie flag. 1775, the Committee of Safety asked William Moultrie to design a flag. He took the crescents off the caps and the blue of the uniform and created the first, what is called the Moultrie flag, which later was adapted and changed to our current South Carolina state flag. I'd like to thank Ken Neighbors, my friend, for sponsoring this channel. I'd like to thank the SC250 out of Charleston for hosting this event and putting it on out at Fort Johnson overlooking the Charleston Harbor. So out here on this point, you can see over my shoulder here the old city of Charleston with the steeples back there, and then the bridge that takes you over the Cooper River Bridge, and then just beyond the bridge there is the USS Yorktown, the naval ship from World War II, and then Sullivan's Island, where Fort Moultrie is, right there. And then far over to my right is Fort Sumter. Here we are on Fort Johnson. So you can see the significance of this position here on this little peninsula. If you like this type of material, especially SC250 events, please subscribe. I've got a playlist just for SC250 events. So we in the 2nd South Carolina Regiment arrived at about 9 o'clock a.m. It was really pretty chilly in the morning to be still somewhat summer. It was really breezy, but it was very nice. And so we started out by going over to the shoreline to do some drill to reinforce what we need to do for the day.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute to the South Carolina and pledge. I salute to the flag of South Carolina and pledge to the Palmetto State love, loyalty, and faith.
Thank you for gathering us on this sacred ground at Fort Johnson, where history was made and a flag was first raised to mark the identity of South Carolina. Today we pause to remember the courage, vision, and sacrifice of those who came before us.
So starting out, we had Major General William Grimsley, who is the chairman for the SC250 group.
Here at Charleston Harbor at historic Fort Johnson, and all of this put together is an important opportunity for us today, 250 years in.
Everybody,
Next we had Rick Wise, who is the CEO of the South Carolina Battleground Preservation
If
Trust.
you all have ever heard me speak, I write out this really neat thing and then I usually wing it anyway. Okay, so this might be, if this is going to fly around, I'll wing it. First of all, this would not be possible today if it were not for the late Doug Bostic. Right here on what became Charleston Harbor has been a very special place throughout history. And then when you had European colonization that started here in the late 1600s, and when they moved to the peninsula between what became the Ashley and Cooper River, if you looked across that body of water, there was a little spit of land here. And if you go to 1706, that little spit of land was called Windmill Point. And I'm going to tell you something. How many of you knew that in 1706, a combined force of Spanish and French troops attacked Charleston, South Carolina? Johnson, after Governor or Sir Nathaniel Johnson, who was the then loyal governor of South Carolina. The fort was built and it was simple, earth and wood, and it served its purpose. It was occupied up until about 1752, which, being here on the coast of South Carolina, it was wiped out by a hurricane. Let's see, it's concrete. That stuff lasts pretty good. Ladies and gentlemen, you can still see some campy remains from Fort Johnson today. At that time, Colonel Moultrie was ordered to take the fort, and Eric Nason is going to come up and talk to you about in detail about what took place in September 1775. So I'll skip over that to the next piece. 1776. Little fort over at Sullivan's Island is fighting a major battle over there against the British. As they're fighting that battle, Colonel Christopher Gadsden is commanding Fort Johnson. Initially, the fort here had in early June 60 cannon mounted. By the time of that battle, they had dispersed them around the harbor. Only 20 were here. You may know, as we're talking about a flag today, you may know Christopher Gadsden. He actually designed another flag. It's yellow with a coiled rattlesnake and "Don't tread on me" underneath. It was bigger, better. Okay, you're going to be able to see the steeples of St. Michael's. St. Michael's steeple was painted black several times so that it would not stand out and give a good navigation feature for our enemies who are off the coast. You got the steeple at St. Philip's. You've got the Exchange Building. If you look over near where the aquarium is, that's approximately where Gadsden's wharf was. It played significant roles in history. When you go over and you look to my right over here, you see that magnificent bridge, but you also see World War II in the form of the USS Yorktown. And then you go across on the same side over around the Mount Pleasant side, and there's Fort Moultrie. That was Fort Sullivan, and that little palmetto log fort that played such a significant role. And then you go across, and there is Fort Sumter standing out in the harbor. And then you go beyond where you see the tree line back there is not there anymore, but that's on Morris Island was where Battery Wagner was. So all this from one place standing here with this magnificent piece of ground holds so much history for all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here today. God bless you. And huzzah!
And next we have our captain of the 2nd South Carolina Regiment, Eric Nason, who I noticed while he was speaking did not even use notes or an outline.
Location. Fort Johnson at the time was the main defense of the city of Charleston. Of course, you're going to have to use your imagination on the size of this tabby fort. It was actually a fairly large triangular fort. It was armed with 7 26-pound cannons, 12 18-pound cannons, and to defend the land side, they had a 9-pounder and they had a 12-pounder. Now, this fort was designed to protect the harbor from any ships coming in. But at the time of the Revolution, city for 3 months. They're not elite yet. But what they were fully manned. This is the reason that the Grenadier commanders, as well as Marion as a light company commander, they would out do their own recruiting. Some of it was real easy. When Marion went to his area, he recruited his total in 1 day. Bernard Elliott, he had to go to Georgia. Now, he would come across this young gentleman by the name of William Jasper. You probably have heard his name. But he also had to go to another town, and to get men to follow him, he had to get into a little fist fight. Because why would some good old boys from Georgia follow a man who wore silk stockings? Well, the problem is he didn't realize he had studied boxing in Oxford. So he had made an agreement with them, because if I beat you, you and your men have to follow. Not only did he beat him, he knocked him out. So not only did all the men join him, he made him a sergeant. But these were the caliber of the people who were in these companies. It's a great flag for the first time. This is their first military operation of the South Carolina unit. It's going to be a nighttime operation. They didn't do nighttime operations in the 18th century for some reason, command and control. And it's going to be an amphibious operation. So you're looking at probably one of the toughest operations that even today in modern military. Nighttime amphibious operation to take a fort heavily armed with cannons. And it would take basically an amphibious. Unfortunately, the Marines were around yet, but boy, we sure could have used some Marines at this point. So they were. And the reason why a lot of the men were also on the Second South, probably good as sailors, because that's where they were. There were a lot of outward sailors in Charleston at the time that is either starved or joined the army. And the other advantage that both Bernard Elliott had and Francis Marion had is they could also go to the other companies, see what men they had. So the royal governor cast them. Of course, he's not going to do it. He sends his secretary. You got to sacrifice somebody. Sacrifice your secretary. He comes up to the water. He wants to know who's in the fort. So you all know Charles Pinckney, man, a few words, very potent words. He meets him at the shoreline, and of course the royal secretary demands to know whose troops are in the fort. And the alien replied, American troops.
And then lastly, we had Dr. Eric Emerson, who is the Director and State Historic Preservation Officer at the South Carolina Department of Archives in Columbia.
The state flag, not just the flag as it was born here today. I'm always grateful to have a chance to talk about it. I get to do it a lot. That we have about how this flag was created and its origins. And it was a signal flag, and it's the simplicity of that design as a signal flag that makes it so beautiful as a state flag today. It's the federal government, and it's prevalent everywhere. It's on militia uniforms, it's on flags, and then 15 years later, during the Mexican War, the palmetto tree is the focal point of the banner carried by the Palmetto Regiment. South Carolina's contribution to the effort, of course, many of us know about their battlefield accolades in Mexico, and the flag even flew over Mexico City at the end of the war.
Now for the official flag raising of the Moultrie flag from 1775 at this massive flagpole here on the grounds of Fort Johnson. I was told that this flag was special made for this event. Next, we in the 2nd South Carolina Regiment gave a musket demonstration, followed by a cannon demonstration by the 4th South Carolina Artillery Continental Line. Renee and I were able to meet Alex, the newest member of the 2nd South Carolina Regiment. Upon meeting Alex, I had to get Alex to shake hands with Mr. Bob Durrett. Bob is the oldest member of the 2nd South Carolina Regiment and could be the last living charter member of the 2nd Regiment. Bob was in not only the 250th today, but he's also been involved in the 225th, and he was also at the bicentennial back in 1975. Artist Dale Watson was there to sell prints of this beautiful painting that he did commemorating the raising of this flag originally in 1775. I'll put a link in the description below to his website so you can get your own copy of this beautiful print.
Went into Marion's brigade where they went, that Western District there, and came strictly second South Carolina. Because J.D. Lewis did a pretty good job. He's got like a 300 slideshow on Marion's brigade. I don't need to redo his stuff.
It doesn't get much more South Carolina than Mr. Hugh G. McClellan. Mr. McClellan is now the director of the McClellanville Museum. His people actually founded McClellanville, South Carolina, way a long time ago. Mr. McClellan is a neat guy, and if you ever get to meet him, you'll really enjoy getting to talk with him as well. And here I am with Mr. Ed Forte. Ed is a neat guy, and we had an opportunity to speak a little bit and get a few pictures with each of us out on the coastline. It was really special. Thank you guys for watching. We hope to see you at the next SC250 event, Lord willing, to be at 96, up in the 96th district in the upcountry of South Carolina.